Welcome as we move into Experience 26 of the series Living Purposefully into Your Very Own Story. Experiences 21 to 30 are each about one aspect of how our very own interweaving stories rub shoulders with mystery as I'm invited to grow into inner freeing and harmony. And before we move into 26 proper, we'll do our little revision. And I draw your attention to the wriggly arrow that's a bit heavy there, because what we're doing is some aspect of how this dialogue can happen between the mystery of life inviting us through our tingles and clangs, inklings and nudges. And the purpose of the dialogue is to lead us to our best selves. And you will notice in this one that word discomfort has got smaller and not as invasive of our attention. And so in Epic Journeying Cycle terms, we're up to the fourth one, which is help along the way. And here are our images, a reminder of in our awareness that epic journeying cycles draw us inwards, and that when we get a call onwards and decide to move into a new pattern, that there will additionally be fear, and probably about this stage we begin to see light at the end of the tunnel, maybe a fair way away. And that light is about an inviting to a sense of freeing and harmony. So a summary of where we are in the epic journeying cycle, explanations and experiences we're engaging with. A sense of discomfort is often the first step to a new epic journeying cycle. And eventually we know when to move and get the courage to move into a new do pattern. And when we do, there are inner struggles as a new sensory memory pathway is strengthening. And in Experience 26, we will be present to becoming more aware of a beginning sense of freeing and harmony. And I've already said this, but I'm saying it again. This happens as the new do pattern brings balance to what was in overdrive in an old pattern. I'm giving you some time now to be present to a time in your life when an old pattern was still there and a new pattern had started to integrate. I'm calling on the wisdom of Noel Davis again. He calls it a simple way. Oh, to see the simple way, so simple it has us wondering whether it is a way at all. Mostly, we look beyond it to a grander way, or we keep to the well-trod track we've taken all our days. And when we're in either of those states, there is some wisdom that Noel presents to us. Oh, to see and take the simple way, to the heart of everything, the way that silence draws us, and the humble choose the way that wisdom walks, and suffering knows the way the grace stream flows. What a wonderful way to embrace what happens to us, named in the first verse. And so I'm reading the poem again. The simple way. Oh, to see the simple way, so simple it has us wondering whether it is a way at all. So we look beyond it to a grander way, or keep to the well-trod track we've taken all our days. Oh, to see and take the simple way to the heart of everything, the way that silence draws us, and the humble choose the way that wisdom walks, and suffering knows the way the grace stream flows. So what can we expect at this stage? Naming the first ones first, coming to expecting. Discomfort as a first stimulus to change or to move onward happens to all of us. Then later, there's a second stimulus from within as a new sensory memory pathway strengthens. There comes to us a knowing there is a harvest to be gathered in the new pattern. And often an outside stimulus presents itself in the form of a coincidence. And the second point I'm making is some examples of coincidences. A Just Right For Me Now book. I have heard that so often. A person comes into our lives. A saying presents itself to us somehow. People or books or emails or signs. Many ways that sayings can come to us. A dream invitation. A word that another speaks, all unknowing about how it affected us. An inspiring experience. A challenge. An insight. And so there are many ways that a coincidence can occur at the right time when we're moving into, have already moved into, a new do pattern. Continuing what to expect. Another point. We experience a sense of conflict in our desires. That is, we want to do or be differently from the old pattern and not allow the old pattern to take over at inappropriate times. And yet, here's the struggle. The automatic pilot element is in overdrive and often shows up in compulsive patterns with work, study, substance abuse, spending, internet addiction, and so on and on the list can go of the ways that we avoid dealing with the conflict of our desires of wanting to go this way and at the same time wanting to go that way, and we can't do both. So when we allow ourselves to become aware of times when the old pattern is triggered, what we can do is pause, name and honour the old pattern, and then choose whether the old or the new pattern is appropriate. And that is so settling and reduces conflict tremendously, the inner conflict in our desires. So now I'm going to name the phases of a new sensory pathway restoring balance. Generally, it is the automatic pilot element in a pattern that is the source of the overdrive element. Our observer self knows that we are driven out of control here and alerts to imbalance through discomfort. A second point. The automatic pilot element of the old pattern decreases enough to free up enough inner space for choice to be the deciding factor for which pattern will be operative. And the third point. The overdrive element of the old pattern moves to a more in balance level gradually. Eventually, we are not at the mercy of the automatic pilot element of a pattern because we can now choose. That is, we are free from overdrive pressures. So I'm inviting you to spend a little time now allowing two experiences to surface. One, when you've experienced a pullback to an old pattern. And two, when you've experienced a push onward to the new pattern. Perhaps also take note of how you feel now about each of these experiences. And so now we're back to allowing our emotional intelligence to have a say, more say than we normally give it. And so the stage of epic journeying we're dealing with is about movement into new territory, past the beginning. And so, again, this is a list of feelings that might encourage that stage of an epic journeying cycle. So to do this, I invite you to breathe in deeply a few times. Breathe in, pause, sense the air moving through your whole body. Breathe out slowly. Do this a few times. And then, in the space which is now created, release this question: what would I like more of? And I'm going to say a series of words, and let one of them that has energy for you reside in this space that you've just created inside you. What would I like more of? Determined and persevering. Responsible. Steady and bold. Alert and vigilant. Solid and reliable. Knowing my heart is safe. Living only in the present. Strong and resilient. I know all is well. I am consistent. I trust myself. If one of those hasn't stood out with having more energy, take either I trust myself or determined and persevering. And now that you know your phrase, let it resound in your being. Let it resound until your body can take up a movement so that the phrase and the movement become one. Allow the phrase and the movement to become one until the movement has more conscious awareness than the phrase. And once you've got that stage, exaggerate the movement. Exaggerate it, using all the space up and down and in and out. All your body involved in this exaggerated movement. And when you're ready, come to a pose. And now I invite you to set this phrase and pose in your sensory memory. And a strategy you could use at any time when you're wanting to move into new territory is to begin your days with this phrase and pose to enhance the quality. And if you had the time and you had the choice, you could repeat going down the words to see if a different word had more energy. So, Experience 21 was about opening yourself to becoming more aware of who you were in your skin. Experience 22 was of recognising inner invitations to embrace a call onwards. Experience 23 was about knowing when to move into action. Experience 24 was about struggles along the way when you embrace a call onwards. Experience 25 was expanding feelings as a new pattern is welcomed. And Experience 26 was becoming aware of a beginning sense of freeing and harmony within you. And Experience 27 will be about noticing the direction of push-pull in energy. And there's a little note. Push-pull energy can be noted in inner jolts, resistance, inklings, niggles, inner nudges, etc. And a second aspect that will be dealt with in Experience 27 is of engaging with help that presents itself. I thank you for having been a part of Experience 26 of the series Living Purposefully into Your Very Own Story.